This is Sri Vittal or Sri Panduranga. This is how Sri Krishna is known in the temple of Pandharpur, Maharashtra, India. Look at the scars on his face. He seems to carry these scars proudly, as though to say, "Look at what my son Bhishma gave me." The scars on his face were caused by the arrows of Bhishma Pitamaha in the epic battle of Mahabharata, fought in the holy site of Kurukshetra, roughly about 5000 and odd years ago. I'll give a small intro into the epic, but before that, my humble pranam to Sri Vyasacharya. I'll try to do my best. Any mistakes are my own. Sri Vyasa Maharishi narrates the glorious tale of the Kuru dynasty in the epic of Mahabharata. Bhishma was born as Devavrata. Devavrata means divine austerities or divine penances. His father was King Shantanu and his mother was River Ganga in her human form. He himself was one of the 8 Vasus or the divine beings who had to be born on earth because of a curse. But all curse come with a remedy, and divine beings have to suffer at least for a little while so that the people of the earth can be benefited. So Bhishma was born in the world for a purpose. Devavrata grows up as a fine warrior and a dharmic prince. He is also the heir apparent to the kingdom of Hastinapura. He is an eligible young man at the portals of all the pleasures of this world. His mother entrusts him to his father and goes back to a river form. One day he finds his father Shantanu in a state of deep sadness and learns through others that his father has fallen in love with the daughter of a fisherman, and then he feels that the marriage cannot take place as he has crossed the stage of marrying. Young Devavrata takes it upon himself to meet the fisherman and convince him to marry his daughter to his father, King Shantanu. The fisherman says he would do so if and only if the sons born to his daughter Satyavati could ascend the throne of Hastinapura. The young prince gives a promise that he won't demand the throne in future. Then the fisherman asks, what would happen if your children demand the throne tomorrow? That's when the young man does the unthinkable act. He vows he would never ever marry or seek any kind of pleasure in life and would live only to protect Hastinapura's throne all his life. The skies cheer, the devas shower flowers on him. No one in known history had sacrificed their happiness to see their parents so happy. Bhishma, Bhishma, cry the skies in praise of his sacrifice. Bhishma means terrific. It was indeed an unusual and terrific vow. Boons were given, and one of the boons was that Devavrata or Bhishma could choose the time of his death. King Shantanu marries Satyavati. Then children are born. Those princes get killed in battles, and Bhishma practically brings up the next generation of princes as well. Dhritarashtra was born sightless and could not ascend the throne, and Pandu, the next one in the line, becomes king. Vidura, the half-brother of them both, is an embodiment of Dharma and serves as a minister in the kingdom of Hastinapura. Pandu is dharmic and brave, and he extends the boundaries of the kingdom and rules with justice while being respectful towards his older brother. But Dhritarashtra grows up with this deep sense of victimhood. He carries this deep sense of sadness and the anger that he cannot be king because he was born sightless. In the meanwhile, Pandu, who is ruling, is cursed by a rishi and exiles himself to the jungle along with his 2 wives. 5 divine sons are born to him in the jungle, while 100 sons are born to Dhritarashtra in the palace. Fate intervenes again and Pandu is killed. His second wife dies too, and Kunti, the first wife, along with the 5 children who are now called as Pandavas, goes back to the city of Hastinapura. The Kauravas, as the sons of Dhritarashtra were called, and the Pandava brothers were mentored by the teachers of the clan, Guru Dronacharya and Guru Kripacharya. They also have the mentorship of Bhishma Pitamaha, who is Pitamaha to both of them. Pitamaha means grandfather. The Kaurava brothers are extremely jealous of the Pandava brothers and try to get them killed. So it's up to Bhishma Pitamaha to protect his grandnephews, the Pandavas, from the anger of the Kauravas. And in due course, the Pandavas get married to Draupadi, and then they are handed a less useful parcel of land called as Kandava Prastha, but they convert that to Indraprastha with their hard work and valor, and this makes Duryodhana and brothers even more jealous. So a deceitful dice game is organized with the help of Duryodhana's uncle Shakuni, and Pandavas are defeated in this dice game. And as per the rules of this game, the Pandavas were enslaved. Draupadi, their wife, becomes a slave to Kauravas as well, and she is brought to the court, and she is humiliated. Dushasana, the brother of Duryodhana, when he tries to disrobe her, she is protected and her honor is protected by the divine grace of Sri Krishna. Scared at the supernatural events that he just came across, Dhritarashtra gives back all that the Pandavas owned. But another deceitful dice game is organized and the Pandavas are defeated again. And by the conditions of that game, the Pandavas have to retire to the forest for 12 years, plus one more year of being underground. They fulfill all these conditions, come out, and when Sri Krishna goes to Hastinapura to speak on behalf of the Pandavas, all offers of peace are rejected by Duryodhana. And thus, the Kauravas and Pandavas now face each other in the battle of Kurukshetra, and Pitamaha Bhishma, bound by his own promise that he would protect the throne of Hastinapura, is forced to fight alongside Duryodhana and army. In this epic battle, the Kauravas outnumber the Pandavas 11:7. But Dharma is on the side of the Pandavas. Sri Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas. But Sri Krishna has taken a vow that he will not fight in this war, but he has agreed to be Arjuna's charioteer because Arjuna wanted it that way. He will do anything for his bhakta. On the opposite side, here in this case, this is a huge war. There are so many battles that go on, but this particular battle is really very interesting because there are two warriors here. Both of them are very similar. Bhishma Pitamaha and Arjuna are very similar to each other. They are both great archers. They both are dharmic people. They both have promises that they are bound to, but one's fighting alongside Dharma and one's fighting against Dharma by the design of fate. And both of them are bhakthas of Sri Krishna, who is a charioteer here. So this picture, looking at this picture, there are a lot of thoughts that come to my mind. One thing is, Pitamaha seems to have his masculine side in charge. He is not allowing his feminine side, that's nurturing, compassion, sympathy, I will put others before me kind of attitude, to come up to the surface. He has his feminine side under control. But Arjuna, despite listening to Bhagavad Gita, has difficulty in applying himself completely to the task. Arjuna is as brave as Bhishma Pitamaha. After all, he was mentored by his granduncle. But the masculine in Arjuna seems to be overshadowed by the feminine. The feminine here is not allowing him to see the truth that he has to play his part here in this war and in this battle. He cannot allow compassion. He cannot allow, I will put yourself first feeling here. But he is not able to get out of his affection mindset for his granduncle. It's not wrong, but it cannot work there. So Sri Krishna had to take matters in his own hands. The Pitamaha's divine arrows were all well aimed. He was there to fight, and he was not there to make excuses. Some of these arrows grazed the face of the charioteer, Sri Krishna, and that must have caused some pain, not to Sri Krishna, but to Bhishma, because Bhishma was a bhakta. To Sri Krishna, it did not cause pain, but he had to shake Arjuna into action. So he acts angry, jumps out of the chariot, pulls a wheel and says that I am going to break my promise now and I am going to kill this old person who is destroying the Pandava army thus. So at this point, Arjuna is jolted awake and he falls at the feet of Sri Krishna and begs him that he should not be breaking his own promises. And he promises that he will do his best. He will not give way to the weakness that The person standing opposite him is his grandfather. Now it was Arjuna's turn to have his masculine in full form. So the battle continues, and Arjuna is now raining arrows on his grandfather. It's not that Arjuna has suddenly turned heartless or anything. It's not that he has got his feminine killed or something like that. Nothing of that kind. It's just that he has his feminine under control now, because that's a battlefield. There is no way that he could get out of it without doing his very best. So every one of these arrows, every one of these divine arrows of Arjuna pierce the armor of Bhishma Pitamaha, go through his chest and come out through the other side. So each and every one of these arrows must have caused immense pain, not to the Pitamaha, but to Arjuna. He knew what he was doing, but he knew it was also necessary that he had to do that. But it takes a lot to do that. But for the Pitamaha, who knew that a war was going to happen, and who knew, because he was wise, what was going to happen, he welcomed this. Each and every one of those arrows gave Pitamaha immense pleasure. This is coming from my child. This is coming from my Arjuna. These are the arrows of my Arjuna. Hastinapura is indeed going to be in good hands. This must have been the thought in the minds of Bhishma Pitamaha that minute. The same way Sri Krishna felt happy when every one of Bhishma's arrows hit him, Bhishma must have felt happy when every one of Arjuna's arrows hit him. There's a small twist here. Bhishma Pitamaha was so powerful that when he was fully armed and fighting, he could not be defeated by anyone other than Sri Krishna himself. When he was not armed and fighting, still only one person in the whole world could actually defeat him, and that was Arjuna. The twist here is that Krishna had vowed never to fight in that war, and Arjuna could only defeat Bhishma Pitamaha if Bhishma laid down his arms. But why would the Pitamaha do that? Pitamaha, as an armed warrior, was practically invincible. Both the Pitamaha and his grandnephew Arjuna were divine beings who were born on this earth, and both were very powerful. But yet, the powers of the Pitamaha was a notch above the powers of Arjuna, and I feel the only reason for this could be this. If we analyze this, we can understand that Arjuna was a dharmic warrior. Arjuna was a dharmic householder who was allowed certain pleasures in life. He was also a sevak to his older brother and King Yudhishthira, and that should have added to his powers. But still Bhishma is one notch above him. Bhishma had taken a vow of celibacy, or he had undertaken the Brahmacharya Vrata. This is one way which can give a man immense powers. This is something he did for the happiness of his father. As a young man, no one forced him to do that. He did this on his own with a full heart. Brahmacharya Vrata is the masculine way of surrendering one's desires for a selfless cause. This can be roughly compared to the Pativrata, which is undertaken by the feminine, where a married woman surrenders her desires for the sake of her husband. She surrenders herself totally for the sake of her husband. But still, a Pativrata, within the framework of Dharma, enjoys certain small pleasures in life. She enjoys motherhood, for example. But a masculine who undertakes the Brahmacharya Vrata, he surrenders all his desires. If desire can be compared to some earth elements, those desires are taken by hand and forcibly thrown into the fire of sacrifice. If you compare desire with water element, a man undertaking Brahmacharya Vrata redirects this water into a higher cause, to a higher cause. The powers that Brahmacharya Vrata can bestow upon a man is immeasurable. Despite the fact that the Pitamaha had interpreted his vow of serving the throne of Hastinapura as serving the selfish interests of a king like Dhritarashtra and his evil sons, despite that fact that his brahmacharya gave him immense powers. So, Dharma, aided by Lord Krishna, could not defeat him unless until Bhishma Pitamaha himself told the Pandavas, his beloved grandnephews, who were on the side of Dharma, about how exactly they could take him out of the scene so that they can win the war. Life's a huge game of chess, but the catch is that it's never black and white. And the wise ones say Dharma is subtle, and it's very hard for even the wise ones to understand at times. Here it looks as though the Lord wanted both Bhishma and Arjuna to understand the nuances of Dharma. And the lessons were not just meant for those two warriors, the lessons are meant for anyone who cares to think about these matters deeply. Bhishma, the invincible warrior, was adding a lot of value to the evil side. The Kaurava power mainly came from Bhishmacharya, and Bhishma's power itself came from his vow of celibacy, his brahmacharya vrata. So, this is a very, very interesting and very intricate kind of battle here that we are watching. Part of the reason why Duryodhana and brothers did all the terrible things that they did was that they were very sure, and it was true also, that the Pitamaha was on their side because they were in Hastinapura and he had sworn to protect the throne of Hastinapura and they could do anything. That was the reason they had even called for that war. They felt that they could not lose. But then Dharma was not on their side. Single-handedly, Bhishma Pitamaha, the invincible warrior, had destroyed a good part of the Pandava army, and this carnage went on for 9 days. And beyond that point, the Pandavas said, enough is enough, and they knew that things were not going their way at all. And taking the advice of Sri Krishna, they decided to go meet him in his barracks after the 9th day war was over. They sought his blessings so that they could win the war. He blessed them wholeheartedly, and when he was asked about how they were supposed to win the war when he was invincible and how they could take him out, he told them the exact way they could take him out of the scene. He told them that as a dharmic warrior with his code of ethics, he will not be able to bear arms if a woman were to appear before him in the battlefield. But how could a woman come to the battlefield? Those were not the times when civilians were attacked in a war between two armies. Civilians were kept out of the battlefields. So a woman coming to a battlefield was unheard of. But then, in this epic tale, by divine design, there was a character just made for this. There was a woman who had vowed that she would cause the death of the Pitamaha. That was in her previous lifetime. She dies and then she is reborn again as a woman. Then she does a lot of penance and then she becomes a man. And then she joins the Pandava side. The man's name is Shikandi. So if Shikandi is brought to the battlefield, Pitamaha would lay down his weapons because Pitamaha, being a wise person, knows about Shikandi, knows even the previous lifetime of Shikandi, and he knows she is there to cause his death. So the Pitamaha gives his opponents, the Pandavas, a very important piece of information about how he could be taken out. Because he had all but given up on life. All he wanted was to see his beloved Hastinapura in peace. He had made some wrong choices in his quest to protect Hastinapura. But then he knew this was an epic war. He knew that this is how he should be playing his part. And being a wise person, he also understood how exactly the divine design worked out. He understood his script in the divine play. At one point, the Pitamaha fell. All the arrows that had gone through him and come out through the other side anchored themselves to the ground. Their feathered ends were just showing on the front side of his body. So this is what the famous bed of arrows looks like. The war had to be continued. 18 days after it started, the war ended with both sides losing heavily. The Pandavas side won. Death rites were done for soldiers from both sides by King Yudhishthira. Then the old warrior was still waiting on his bed of arrows. His mind was fixed on Paramatma, Sri Krishna. He wanted to have a darshan of his beloved. And Sri Krishna instructed the Pandavas that they should go and take dharmic advice from Bhishmacharya. And as they all approached his bed of arrows, the Vishnu Sahasranama was born out of Bhishma Pitamaha. The beautiful song of the 1,000 names of the Lord came out from this warrior while he was in intense and immense pain. But I do not think that he was really suffering from that pain. It was all the blood that kept him bonded to the toxic people in his life. All of it went out, and he must have felt an immense feeling of relief. And he knew the time for him to leave the world has come, and he was just waiting for the auspicious day for that. After instructing King Yudhishthira and his brothers about many intricate dharmic matters, the Pitamaha continued to wait on his bed of arrows. Then Uttarayana is a period which starts by either January 14th or the 15th of January every year. And after Uttarayana, the sun enters into Aquarius. And during the bright phase of the moon, the 7th day of this bright phase of the moon is known as Ratha Saptami, which is very auspicious. The Pitamaha chose the day after Ratha Saptami to make his ascension. So he completed his life's journey and went back to the world where he came from. The Stoic masculine, that was Bhishma Pitamaha, had his feminine, devoted side well within him, but both sides were in balance. As a masculine, he fought on with dispassion. He fought on with detachment. As a feminine, he retained his devotion within himself that wasn't dead. He had his bhakti for Krishna very much, but he really listened to Krishna. He did his duty as per the role he understood he was meant to perform in that huge cosmic drama authored by Bhagavan. He did make some wrong choices earlier in life, but ultimately Bhagavan looked at who he was or what he had become. Or Bhagavan looked at the balance Bhishma Pitamaha was able to achieve by the end of his life and rewarded him for that. The 13 years that the Pandavas had to spend in jungle must have been an intense period for Bhishma Pitamaha as well. He must have gone through a period of soul searching, and then the period of the war itself, and then the slightly longer period where he had to lie on that bed of arrows. All this put together, he went back to his balance, he went back to his divinity, he went back to his original home.